Most game companies nowadays have fairly well-defined personalities. They've all got their own brands, their own niche, and plenty of them have their own mascots. Take a look at the big three. Nintendo has Mario, Xbox has Master Chief, and PlayStation has Astrobot. But it wasn't always that clearly defined. These mascots went through dozens of iterations before companies finally settled on who was going to represent them. Xbox, for example, used to be represented by Blinks, the time-traveling cat, and PlayStation has a history of using a myriad of characters to represent themselves. Before Astrobot was so clearly defined as the mascot of the PS5, there was a long period of time when Sony represented itself with Sackboy, Nathan Drake, Kratos, and dozens of other characters. Arguably, there's still some bleed over between these characters and Astrobot, but before even that, PlayStation was most clearly defined by Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. These guys were the face of the PlayStation for the longest time, and we're only now seeing a resurgence in their popularity. Ever since shortly before the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy released in 2017, we've seen a huge spike in interest for these two characters. Not only from their nostalgia factor either, lots of new people are finally playing these games for the first time. When the N. Sane Trilogy released, loads of Spyro fans took that as a sign that Spyro would soon get a remaster as well, taking to the internet to make it abundantly clear that there's a lot of demand for more of the little purple guy. And now, since Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time released last year, it's happening all over again. You can't have Crash without Spyro. And while I've never made a video about Crash, we'll get to it, don't worry. Today is all about the little purple guy. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy released on November 13th, 2018, only 1 year after the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy, and a full 2 decades after the release of the original game. But you know me, I don't tend to cover the originals when a newer, more accessible version comes out. Lots of people are only now getting the chance to try these games, and that's mostly because they don't need to track down and purchase a 25-year-old console and a 23-year-old game, or else resort to pirating. Now, for the first time in decades, Spyro is available on physical shelves or digital storefronts on all platforms. For the first time ever, the little scaly dude is available not only on PlayStation, but also your Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and Windows PC. This isn't a remaster comparison video. I'm not just going to go through the Reignited Trilogy and talk about the differences between it and the originals. Because this version of the game is more accessible, and likely how someone who's new to the franchise is going to approach it, and because I likely won't be covering the PS1 versions of the games on my channel, I'm going to take a look at each game in the series individually and talk about them using the Reignited version as a focus point. If you want to hear my thoughts on the other two games, there will be a link to the playlist at the end of the video after they've been released, and if you want to catch them as they come out, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. For now, let's talk about the game that started it all, Spyro the Dragon. The game opens on a news interview with an elderly dragon in the realm of artisans. They explain that the world of dragons has been quite peaceful for a long time now. However, the newscaster asks about his thoughts on a Gnasty character who's supposedly turning gems into warriors for his cause. This is when another dragon steps in, calling Gnasty simple, no threat, and ugly. That last part is apparently the last straw for Mr. Gnorc, and he suits up, using his magic to turn all the dragons into crystal. Well, almost all the dragons. Spyro's just fine, and it's up to him to save the other dragons and defeat Gnasty Gnorc. It's a pretty simple setup for, admittedly, a pretty simple game. It was still the 90s when the game originally released. They weren't too concerned about some big, compelling story. Just give the kids some motivating factor and send them on their way. And honestly, it works pretty darn well. Spyro doesn't need all the bells and whistles when it comes to plot and lore, or at least the originals didn't. Just go save the dragons. When the cutscene is over, the game drops you into the Artisan's Realm, which is one of the 5,
or is it 6?
Dragon Homeworlds. These are fairly run-of-the-mill platformer hub levels, all things considered, acting as a way to go between each level of the game while providing the player with a nice spot to run around in and explore, complete with their own collectibles to collect and enemies to defeat. Contrasting it with something like Super Mario 64, moving from one homeworld to the next is kinda similar to unlocking the various doors in Princess Peach's castle. but I think I actually prefer the way Spyro does it. Every one of the hub worlds has their own distinct theme, from the quiet countryside home of the artisans to the militaristic desert of the peacekeepers. What's more, everything in each world fits that theme. The enemies, levels, and even the dragons you have to save are all designed in a way that makes them feel like they naturally exist in context. For example, all the enemies in the Magic Crafters world are wizards and druids. All the levels in the Beastmakers world take place in wooded areas or swamps. And in Dreamweavers, all of the dragons have these adorable sleeping caps on. Ah, I love them so much. Normally, Spyro's moveset is pretty basic. He can jump, charge, flame, and glide. That's essentially it. And it doesn't get much more complex than that. As the game goes on, you mostly have to use 4 abilities in slightly different ways in order to progress, with some levels providing you with ways to enhance those abilities to break through special barriers, defeat special enemies, or find whatever else they have in store. Most of the gameplay follows that really basic pattern, as you would expect from an early platformer like this one. You just run around and jump between platforms while busting up some pretty basic enemies along the way.
Don't be deceived though, the levels may have a defined beginning and end, but the goal isn't necessarily to just go between those two things. You still have to save those dragons.
In order to do that, all you really have to do is find them and walk up to the pedestal. When you get close, they'll break out of their crystal confines and give Spyro some helpful advice, or sometimes just,
"Thank you for releasing me."
I mean, it can't all be helpful.
Holy cow, their animations are beautiful though. You can tell just how much care and attention went into this game. I mean, the original did everything it could, and they definitely get points for trying, but this is absolutely just... On top of the dragons, you're also tasked with saving their eggs from these dastardly egg thieves.
I don't know what it is about these guys, but I always found them so hard to catch when I was younger.
Maybe it was because the controls were slightly different on the PS1, or maybe it was just because I was born with a square brain and couldn't figure out how to cut corners or use Spyro's flame. But either way, all you gotta do is chase him down and beat him up to get the egg back.
I'm not sure why I expected it to be so difficult.
Last but not least, every platformer has to have some kind of currency for you to collect along the way, and Spyro is no exception to that rule. If you want to stop Gnasty Nork from turning all of the gems into warriors, you're going to have to get them first.
No, this can't be right. All 14,000 of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of gems in this game, but that number sounds a lot higher than it actually is. Gems come in different amounts, based on their colors, kinda like rupees in any Legend of Zelda game. You can find them just lying on the ground or in little chests. Plus, since Mr. Gnorc has been turning them into warriors, that means every baddie you defeat will turn right back into a gem when you defeat them. Tracking them down might sometimes be a bit of a struggle, especially on stages like Treetops, where they might be a bit out of the way, but that's where Spyro's little dragonfly pal Sparks comes in. Look at this little guy, he's so cute, what a good little dude. Sparks will help Spyro by picking up any gems that might be lying around, making it a bit easier on you since you don't have to go around picking up every individual gem on your own. And if you're ever stuck, you can press down on the left joystick to get Sparks to point in the direction of the nearest gem, making collecting these things a breeze. That's a feature, by the way, that was missing from the original game. It does reduce the difficulty a little bit, but I mostly consider it a quality of life option. Sometimes you explore a whole stage and just miss one gem because it passed by in the corner of your eye, or maybe Sparks wasn't around to help you pick it up. The gems are usually pretty easy to spot in this game, so getting a little hint from Sparks doesn't necessarily trivialize anything, but it does add some quality of life. You're definitely going to want to keep Sparks around either way though, because he also kind of acts as your health meter.
Yeah, the poor little guy tanks every hit so Spyro doesn't get hurt. Well, that makes me sad.
But yeah, Sparks will change color depending on how many hits you've taken, starting at yellow, then turning green, then blue, and then disappearing completely. At that point, he won't be able to help you pick up any gems or guide you in the right direction. Plus, if you take just one more hit, you'll lose a life and start again from your latest save point.
To fix Sparks back up, all you gotta do is feed him some butterflies. Go ruthlessly murder some sheep or chickens or something, you monster, and they'll turn into a pretty little butterfly for Sparks to slaughter too, that heartless animal.
Once you're satisfied with the amount of dragons, eggs, and gems you've collected in a level, you can leave through the exit portal or the pause menu. There are only a couple of stages that actually require you to leave through the exit portal, and they're all in the final homeworld, so I personally never really bothered with it most of the time. I just checked the guidebook to make sure I had everything, and peaced out. Every homeworld is also home to these sort of bonus level type things. Flying courses, if you will. Each one is kind of like a little flying obstacle course where you glide around, going through hoops or breaking objects. There are 4 sets of obstacles to collect, and getting them all will reward you with a bunch of gems. But since this is an obstacle course after all, it also records your time. This is pretty neat, like a little challenge mode where you can strategize different routes to take through the level and optimize your time, or compare your time with your friends and see who can beat it the fastest.
I used to be all over that kind of thing when I was younger. Sitting down with a friend to play single-player games and seeing who can last the longest or who can beat a certain part the fastest, that was a blast.
Lastly, every homeworld has a boss level. They're kinda like any other level, but a tiny bit more linear. There's just a little bit less exploration to do in order to collect everything. And at the end of each one is...
What a surprise! A boss!
Honestly, I wish there was more to say about these guys, but there's not really anything special about them. Just run up to them, avoid their attacks, and smack them to make them run away. Do this 3 times, and you've defeated them.
Yeah, I know. Kinda lame, right? I promise the bosses in the next 2 games are better, but I have to save those for their own videos, so bear with me.
It really is disappointing though. I really like the designs of these guys, so it would have been really cool to have a longer, more interesting boss fight. It wouldn't have to be anything too difficult either. Just something to show off their personality a bit more, maybe a little bit more challenging. Something. These fights don't really even stand out against regular old enemies this way. In fact, some of them are even less interesting.
Except, you know what? Not all of them are so bad.
There's this one guy, Metalhead, who has these little lightning rods scattered around his level. If you want to hit him, you have to take out the lightning rods, but only when they're flashing green. It's not much in terms of difficulty, but it really makes him stand out amongst the other bosses. Where every other boss basically just requires you to run up and smack him, Metalhead requires a little bit of problem solving to properly take him out.
It doesn't take much to spruce up a boss fight, even in a simple game like Spyro.
Once you're done with the 3 levels, flying course and boss fight, you're ready to move on to the next homeworld.
I guess you could technically move on before beating all this stuff, but segues are hard, okay? Cut me some slack.
All you've got to do is go up to this balloonist, and if you've collected enough dragons, eggs, or gems,
because yes, every collectible does matter in this game,
you can move on to the next homeworld, eventually reaching the world of old Gnasty himself. This one is actually a bit different than the homeworlds previously in the game. There's not much to explore here, just another dragon to save in the center of the Nexus.
Wait. Not another dragon, but one of the dragons you already saved earlier in the game.
In fact, every dragon you rescue in Gnasty's world are dragons that you saved earlier. Yeah, I guess these guys don't trust that Spyro can beat Gnasty Nork all on his own, so they went after him themselves and got turned right back into crystal.
Come on, guys, have more faith in my boy. Look at him, he's more than capable.
Not that many of them got recaptured anyway. There are only 6 total dragons throughout this world and both of its levels. Plus, there's not really all too much to explore in the levels here. Just reach the exit portal in each one in order to unlock the next and eventually fight the Gnorc himself. And as if the other bosses weren't foreshadowing enough, Gnasty Nork's fight might even be the most disappointing and anticlimactic one in the whole game. Seriously, all you have to do is smack 2 of these thieves to get their keys, unlocking the path to Gnasty, then just chase them down and smack them twice.
Just twice, not even like 3 times, just do.
Talk about underwhelming. Luckily, the game doesn't quite end there. If you manage to collect 100% of the dragons, eggs, and gems in the game, you can come right back to Gnasty's world and plunder his loot. Yeah, you get to play through this cool bonus level where you can fly around infinitely, unlocking doors and gaining height until you can soar around the entire stage. And when you get to the very top, this might be like Gnasty's bedroom or something. I mean, there's no bed, but like, I don't know, I just love it. The giant portrait of himself, the pile of fan mail, the motivational posters. I mean, confidence. There's nothing standing between you and your goal but a little tiny purple dragon.
Gosh, the developers really had the time of their life just injecting personality into every little nook and cranny of this game.
The original all the way back on the PS1 was already full of personality, and honestly, that's probably why the franchise took off in the first place. But with the reignited version of the game, they took everything the first one did and amplified it, giving the whole experience this sense of polish and completeness. The game itself is really simple. It's probably one of the easiest and most straightforward games out there, but that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. I had a blast revisiting it, and honestly, it was such a great introductory game for me back in the day.
You don't have to be some sort of seasoned gamer to get enjoyment out of this game. The barrier for entry is super low.
Couple that with the super cute aesthetic, and you've got a great choice for your first game, or your 100th game. I really would recommend it to anyone, especially if you want a fairly laid-back, feel-good experience.
But that's not all I have to say about everybody's favorite Purple Dragon. There are still at least 2 more games to cover, and I'll be back with those soon. So, if you want to catch my thoughts on those, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to turn on notifications. For now, I've been Cosmo. Thanks for watching.